Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It feels so good to be back at the desk. Not just talking about a new movie and just talking to you guys in general, but like having the drive, having the motivation, having the energy to actually sit down and do it. Oh, it feels so good. And we got a movie that really has kind of kickstarted all those things flowing through my body once again. I have fallen off a bit for the last month, and I apologize about that. If you want more details, more understanding, shocker, work and life, getting crazy, kind of just had to pick things to do, and everything else was like chill mode. But if you want all my full thoughts about what's been going on and what we got coming up, you can check them out right up there. But now we turn our attention to the movie that got me back in this seat. And I said to myself coming out, I just have to talk about this movie in a long form way at the desk. And I am so happy and excited to do so. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair? Take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler free. Oh, it feels good to say that again. Into Weapons. And my goodness, Zach Cregger got to be the hottest thing in Hollywood right now, and it has immediately, in 2 movies, cemented himself as one of the modern horror, dark comedy masters right now. I have him in that field with Jordan Peele, Robert Eggers, Ari Aster. Throw my guy Zach Cregger in there, man. He's a 2 for 2 in a big way, and might have the most unique voice of that group, which is crazy to say, but how he structures and how he tells a movie. I've never seen anyone keep you on your toes the way Cregger does. You genuinely can't see what's coming next. And that was the big surprise with Barbarian, right? Like, we got Barbarian and it was, holy cow, I didn't know that that is what that movie was going to be. And how he broke it up into its 3 acts, but changed tone and played with things and brought in humor, but also scared the living heck out of you. Like, it was so impressive. And the energy that that movie had is one that just makes you want to go back to the theater, makes you want to keep watching. And Weapons has all of that once again. And this is just one of those movies where it nails the horror stuff, but it is also laugh out loud funny. And it's interesting because the movie's dark. Like, this story is, if you were unfamiliar, Weapons is about a town where at 2:17 in the morning, everybody but one kid in one specific elementary school class walks out of their houses, runs Ninja Turtle style into the dark, and never comes back. That's your tee up. That's your setup. That teaser trailer had everybody hooked right away. And I'm not gonna lie, I wish I wouldn't have watched the full trailer, because I did piece a few things together this time more than I did with Barbarian. But even knowing the one big thing that I had figured out and kind of had I'm a seasoned vet in these things, and I had an inkling and I had a feeling. And even knowing that and having that idea in my head, when you were in the movie, you can't see what's coming. How you get from point A to point B, even if you know what point B is never the way you think you're going to get there. And I got to start with Zach Cregger's script, because this dude is such a strong writer. And after seeing the movie not once, I went at 2:17 the day it came out because I just had to. But I was like, I need to go see it again, because 2:17 in the afternoon on a Thursday, not very crowded. But with a full Thursday night crowd, bro, it was such a great audience-going experience. Like, it's one of these things where pre-COVID, I loved packed houses for genre-type movies, because the fans that show up in that first weekend are invested. They're all locked in. Post-COVID, you get people on their phones, people talking, people not paying attention, and that stuff pisses me off in a large audience. But this movie, it brought the people who wanted to see this movie out first, and everybody was locked in. And even though there was audible responses from the crowd, they were all at the right times. They all made sense. They never impacted or took away from the movie, and the energy in that theater is just an experience that very few creators can hit right now. And Cregger is one of those guys who it's like, you got to go to the theater and you got to go see it with people because you aren't ready for what's coming. And when you look at his script, it's no surprise that we've gotten these stories about Jordan Peele being very upset that he lost the bidding and that he fired people following losing the bidding war to get the weapons script. It's one of those like double-edged sword things, because having seen 2 movies from Cregger now, God, I would love to see him work with Jordan Peele. Like, Peele producing a Cregger movie, the collaboration and what these 2 dudes could do would be unbelievable. But if Jordan Peele had been the producer on this, the lead-in wouldn't have been Zach Cregger. It would have been from producer Jordan Peele and the creator of Barbarian. Like, it would have been a dual thing where Cregger would have had to share a little bit of the spotlight, even though this is his movie. So the fact that Jordan Peele lost that bid, you don't know who the main producer is on this movie, and all the conversation is giving Zach Cregger his flowers. I mean, an A- cinema score, super high Rotten Tomatoes scores, both audience and critics at this point, and we're only 1 day in. But it's one of those where, like, I'm so glad that it didn't, because Zach Cregger is the person we should be talking about, because his mind and how he works is just unbelievable. And like I said, the script here is so strong. Like, this is a big double win for Warner Brothers in the horror department, I think, with Sinners and this. But if you're thinking Oscar buzz, you're not going to step on Sinners. And I don't think Zach Cregger would want this movie to step on Sinners. But if there was a spot where this movie could have a run at a nomination, it's 100% the screenplay. And what he does with this script and this structure, I thought was so genius for this story. He picks 6 people in town and gives us their perspective in chapters. And what's really neat from the writing perspective is that when you take all 6 of those people, it kind of gives you the full town's perspective. And you're getting it from all different flavors and places. And each one of these stories gives you the next piece in the puzzle. So the build, one of the best builds I have seen through 2 acts to a 3rd act that just absolutely hits what it is promising and what it is hoping to do. And the best part about the 3rd act is not that it just nails giving you something that you've been building to and landing where you hope it does, but it's the most outrageous stretch of the movie. And from horror to dark comedy, like, the 3rd act gives you so much. Like, I'd almost say the 3rd act for me feels similar in how it's shifting in its tone with how Barbarian went from Act 1 to Act 2. This, it's more of a build, and then deliver. And what else I really like here is that the script gives great material for the actors who give great performances. But I think more so than Barbarian, really felt like Cregger had something to say. And while this movie is laugh out loud funny at times, Cregger never lets you get away from the fact that this movie is about child abduction and that something really dark happened here. And the end note beat is one that snaps you back to that reality. So while we can have fun at the end of this movie and you can get things that are super enjoyable and laugh out loud funny, he makes sure to snap you back like, hey, what we've been talking about this whole movie, that stuff's real. That stuff's serious. And it's one of these things where I had a friend of mine go, I kind of had mixed feelings on the movie. And one of the few people that I've even heard say that out loud. But all of the people that I have heard say have mixed feelings, they feel unsatisfied about where we land. It's like the story just ends abruptly and you get no answers. And I said to him, one, the perspective of the film being the town, I would not expect to get the answers because they don't get all the answers. But also, I think when you're looking at child abduction stories, a lot of times the family members, whether the kid is rescued, whether the kid turns up dead, or whether the kid just is never seen again, you don't always get all of the answers, right? There are lots of these situations where you save the kid and you get the kids back, but the abductor gets killed in a shootout or something like that, and you don't get the answers that you're looking for. And I think that piece of the movie is one that hits really well thematically when you're talking about child abduction and how Cregger paints that through the town and how something like that impacts a town, especially a small suburban town. Like, you really feel those vibes, and like I said, you never lose sight of the fact that this movie is serious, this movie is dark, and this movie is sad. Like, there are really sad things that happen. But I think what the special sauce is for Cregger is somehow he can land on dark comedy beats that can cut that tension, that can give you a moment of relief, give you a moment of enjoyability, but always brings you back. And that's the thing that I love so much about the script. And then when you watch what this guy does behind the camera, oh my God, I've got to give a huge shout out to Larkin Seiple. Shoots the living heck out of this movie. This thing is gorgeous start to finish. And it's interesting because when you're looking at child abduction and you're looking at the way the movie is shot, this movie gives me hardcore Prisoners vibes. Like, the way it looks, the way it functions. It's just like if you did Prisoners, but with dark comedy. Like, that's the only difference. Like, Prisoners, there's no laughing. That is tense the whole run. This does break it up and create something I think that's more enjoyable. But visually, the way it looks, the color palettes, and just the style to the way, Seiple moves the camera, it just gives you those vibes, and I think it's the perfect energy to tap into when you're going into a horror movie that's focusing on child abduction. But I say what Zach Cregger does behind the camera because I think his vision with Seiple's just creates something where, like, you get beautiful cinematography, but every once in a while you get like a really cool camera movement or choice. My favorite, it's so small, it happens so early in the movie, first chapter, but there's a shot where you see Julia Garner's character come into a kitchen and start to make a drink, and the camera is focused on the glass. That shot in and of itself, I was like, oh, that's so interesting, like, we're focused there, and then something happens that makes the camera have to move, and it kind of shifts its focus back to Garner, but it doesn't angle up to where she is. It stays where it is and just slides across to whatever you're doing. And I was like, oh, that felt good. And there's a bunch of those types of movements, but again, just visually how he sees this story and this world and how him and Seiple tell the story visually creates this energy where you are on the edge of your seat, you are uncomfortable. And yes, some of that is the subject matter and some of that's what's on screen. But like, even just the way the camera moves, the energy it creates. Someone was asking me, is it scarier than Barbarian? And I go, it's an interesting question. I think Barbarian's pops in the horror world are a little bit stronger than Weapons. But I think the way Weapons makes you feel uncomfortable, uneasy, and scares the crap out of you is a smidge above what Barbarian did. And that is the camera movements and how it's shot. Like, there are things that are going on sometimes where the actor's energy is at a huge high, the camera matches that, the scoring matches that, and you just feel the fear and the horror presence just like moving on you. It's hard to put into words, but it's just this energy that's created, and so much of that is involved in the cinematography. And the other thing that I just mentioned, the score. The score drives so much in this movie, and the way the score and the acting and the camera work all complement each other just creates a damn near perfect horror movie. And when you look at the score, this is one of those things where it's like, I can't speak high enough about Zach Cregger because he's doing things we never see writers, directors do. This dude wrote this movie, directed this movie, produced this movie. He's not the main editor, but we all know that your director and editor are in those bays together, at times working together, so he's obviously involved in the editing. And then he's one of the three dudes that scored the movie. You have brothers Hayes Holladay and Ryan Holladay, and then Zach Cregger are your three composers on the movie. Like, this dude, I think it's what makes him so impressive, because he understands all the elements, because he was an actor before this, so he understands what it's like to be in front of the camera. He gets what it's like to be behind the camera. He understands the scoring. He understands the cinematography and how all of those connect, and it's just a package that is just such a well-executed movie from the technical elements. And he also has some nice needle drops in here, and like I said, the editing is so cool, because like in each one of the chapters, the combo of the editing and the camera work, again, is what I think creates this energy. One of the things I love when it comes to the editing is the chapters ramp up, ramp up, ramp up. And when you hit the peak of that ramp, that's where your chapter ends. And it just continually brings you to this, oh shoot, we're back. Oh shoot, we're back. And you can never really fully get your feet cemented or planted the whole movie. But then the other thing that I love about the cinematography and the chapters, like I said, this is a perspective movie. And every chapter starts by the camera telling you the perspective that you're looking at. And it's not because it's just showing you the actor, but it's the choice that Cregger has for each open. The camera is right behind the character, and it's either right behind their head, maybe a little bit further back, but it is behind and looking at the back of them. And it's kind of every time it happens, and I felt this so much more on the second viewing, it feels like you're shifting into that person. And then that person's perspective is the only perspective that we are riding with. We might see other things that they're experiencing, but we're feeling what they're feeling. And you get that through the first chapter, you get that through the second chapter. The third chapter is the first spot where there is, I think, a small perspective shift, where you were with a character and then you slide over to another. And even when you slide over, you come from the back. And then that gets to be more and more as you get through the back end of the chapters, because these characters are at a place where all of the story pieces are starting to come together. They have to bottleneck and merge, and things that are happening just forces the perspective to shift. But every time he does it, comes from the back. Make sure you feel like you are sitting into that person. And I genuinely feel that you are feeling what they're feeling in the movie. When we're with Garner's character, you feel that anxiety that she is feeling. When you're with Brolin's character, you feel the anger and the frustration that's going on there. When you're with Juan's character, you kind of get some of the empathy and trying to understand and be the person that's like navigating a lot of this stuff. It's so cool how you're able to get different perspectives of the town that give you more elements that when all six come together, you land in a story where it's like, oh snap, and then the third act just goes off. And I can't speak high enough to what Cregger does when it comes to all those things, and how he just captures in the settings something that feels very lived in, that feels real. Like you feel like you're in a real suburb. You feel like you're going in and out of real homes and real schools, and just that element just makes, it's just a piece that adds to this movie every single second you are watching it. And I just love watching how Cregger makes a movie. But the other thing that he is so tremendously good at is setting up his actors to succeed and to be really good and to do really good things. Like I think that's some of the acting mentality that he has from being in front of the camera, that knows what it's like to be there. And there feels like there's a collaboration. And when you look at this cast, I mean, it is big and it is tremendous. And it starts with a little girl who I'm not personally very familiar with. Her name is Scarlett Sher, and she's our narrator. And it's one of these things where this is not a kid actor. Even though we don't see her on screen, this is an actor, man. The tone in her voice is so unsettling and uneasy. And it's the first thing we hear. Before we even get images, we hear that voice, and it sets a tone. And that's one of the things that I also like with the structure of the film, is Cregger very much is setting your tone with the opening with Sher, with your first chapter, with your second chapter, and then your third chapter. As you're getting to the halfway point, the movie's starting to tip tonally into being more intense, having more dark comedy beats, opening up to be more than just the weight. But I love that he starts there, because when you're talking about child abduction and how it impacts people and the town, like, that's heavy, and you should feel that uneasiness, and you do. And it starts with an unbelievable opening narration, an unbelievable narrating throughout the course of the entire movie. Like, anytime she pops up, it is so important, but her ending and her beginning are just the most important moments. Like, it's one of those, she's who snaps you back into reality at the end of the movie after you've had a little bit of, dark comedy fun. But like, she snaps you in, she gets you started. And when you shift over to Julia Garner, she is just taking that baton, and you are feeling everything that's going on with her. Like I said, these perspectives put you in those shoes, in those vibes, in those feelings. And Garner carries that anxiety, that nervousness, that concern and love for your kids, right? Like when you're a teacher, you really care about the kids sometimes. And the way that she carries that in conjunction with her own anxiety and angst, and like having the town basically come at her nonstop, like you feel all of that. And you can understand where she's coming from, but she's also somebody who like will cross a line. And it's interesting to watch how she plays with those things, because there's times where you're just like, yo, Justine, sit down, girl. Stop doing things. You know what I mean? And it's just that ferocious energy that Garner is so good at tapping into that pushes her, even though she is hitting all sorts of roadblocks and walls. And I was just really, really impressed with her. And like I said, Justine takes that baton, keeps that anxiousness, keeps that weight, feeling it. And she passes that baton to Mr. Josh Brolin, who is excellent here and in a role that was supposed to be Pedro Pascal's. And I think Pedro would have been very good in the role, but considering how many like fathers dealing with tough things with their kids characters he plays, I'm kind of glad that the strikes pushed the schedule in a spot where he couldn't do this, because I think Josh Brolin just fits the character of Archer a little bit better. And again, much like you feel the anxiety going on with Garner and her character, Brolin is making you feel that anger, that frustration, right? We're a month into this when the movie picks up, and you're just like, why do we not have answers? How have we not found these kids, right? Like you see or you hear about these stories, and it's so important within the first like 3 days to make progress. And you're a month in, and you feel that. And he's a very interesting character, and I really like how he picks and chooses how to approach each scene that he's in, whether it's his perspective or when he comes into some of the other stories. Like what he brings energy wise and how his character is adapting. Like his arc was one that I really, really enjoyed. And his character does have a moment that is like the only thing that I have questions on. It's the other thing that happens to each of these characters is you witness pieces of dreams that they're having and how they connect in some way to what's going on. And there's one thing in his dream that pops up. It's like above his house. And you're just like, I'm not sure what we're trying to say there. I've got some thoughts and ideas, but it is like the one odd thing. But Brolin himself absolutely nails what's going on with Archer. And like I said, he's got a more complex story than some of the others, and I really thought he navigated those quite well. So now you've got, you know, a child perspective in delivering the opening of the movie. You've got a faculty's perspective. You've got a parent's perspective. Naturally, we got to move over to the police. And Alden Ehrenreich, man, I have always liked this guy, and he was bringing it in this movie. His character is also complicated and not necessarily the most likable of people in the movie, but how he navigates being a cop and how he navigates feeling the pressure of the things going on in his life, from the case to some of the things going on with him personally to how that impacts how he does his job. There are some interesting things that go on with Paul, and again is one of those where you feel a little bit of what this situation is doing to your police perspective. But he's also the piece of the story that starts to ramp up into the crazier things that are going on and into the more horror places that you want to go with whatever is happening. Like his piece of the story starts to morph into that and starts to create this energy where you're like, there is just something brewing in town, and you can feel it in his performance. And then his baton pass is actually to a character that he comes across in his story, James, who's played by Austin Abrams, who transformative in this movie. He is maybe my favorite performance of the entire movie. He is the town druggie. He is homeless, you know, he's living in a tent. He scrounges. He, you know, needs to have his fix. Like he's one of those characters. He's the unpredictable. He's the bottom of the barrel. He's the maybe someone you should look at type character. And to see how he functions, like he couldn't give two craps about what's going on. He's just trying to survive, and in trying to survive, kind of inadvertently stumbles his way into the story and becomes a very integral piece in moving things forward. And it's not what I would have expected for that type of character, and it was really cool to see Cregger just give Abrams really, really good stuff that let him just go to someplace that, like I said, was a very transformative performance. And then you move over to another faculty member, the one who kind of is overseeing what's going on, the voice of reason, so to speak, in the faculty realm, and that's Benedict Wong's Marcus. And that, again, is an interesting perspective because he is like the whole school. He's the one who interacts with all of the parents, and he's the one who has got to like look out for the kids but also look out for his teachers. And I love seeing how much he cares and how frustrated he gets because, like I said, Justine can be very frustrating. And it's one of these things where, again, his story, you're kind of lifting more of the heavy dread off and starting to open up into the movie, kind of exploring other things. And there's stuff that goes on with Marcus. I mean, we've seen it in the trailers. You've seen Benedict Wong running down the street with them bugged out eyes. And that whole stretch of the movie is one of the most uneasy, scary, intense stretches of the movie, and Wong absolutely crushes it. And then you finally pass the baton over to the other kid actor in the movie, and he's not a kid actor. Cary Christopher, who plays Alex, I'm putting him in the same ballpark as Scarlett Sher, man. He is an actor, and while he doesn't have a lot of line delivery to do in this movie, he is the one kid who didn't disappear. And to feel that weight on him, and you can already tell this is a quiet kid. Like, there's a moment where Garner, spoilers, goes to him like, Alex, are you okay? Like, you've been a little quieter than normal. And you're like, you can feel that. Like, the energy he has, you're like, this is a quiet kid at school. Like, comes in, does what he has to do, will definitely be someone who will raise his hand when he knows an answer. But, like, he's not the standout. He's not gonna be the popular kid. Like, he's gonna be maybe adjacent to the pot. Like, you know, like, you can feel some of the already social anxiety this kid has. And now you put this situation happening on top of him and all your friends disappearing and not knowing what to do, police asking you questions when you're like 8, 9, 10 years old. Like, there's a lot weighing on this kid, and you feel it in his physicality and in his body language. And I was so impressed. Like, you got two kids in this movie that are giving you top tier performances. One with just voice work, one with a lot of body language. And Alex's story is obviously very important and really is what kind of runs us through to the end of the movie. And I just loved how you see him function. On my second viewing, really paying attention to what he's doing, cool, like, Cregger builds in really cool stuff around this kid who you feel so much empathy towards, but you also have like all these questions, right? And how that piece kind of just fits in telling us what goes on is unbelievable. And there's one other character we've seen in the trailers, played by Amy Madigan. Wow. Like, again, this is a spot where I don't see Warner Brothers really pushing this movie toward Oscars, even though it could, because you have Sinners. But if there was another spot where maybe Oscar conversation or nomination conversation could come in, what Amy Madigan does in this movie, oh my God, she is flawless and plays a character that I would gladly take more of, would love to know more, but I didn't need it. You can kind of figure out what's going on with her as the movie is progressing and as you're starting to see what's happening. And while, like I said, my buddy, I could understand the frustration because it's not force-fed to you and wrapped up in a nice, neat little package. But if you are a fan of horror, if you play in these worlds, you're able to understand her story, and her story is fascinating. I have questions around her story, but what she does performance-wise, like, a tremendous cast, everybody doing great things, and yet Amy Madigan comes in here and just blows the top off this movie. It's the cherry on the top of the cake. It's the thing that puts it over the edge for me. Like, that performance is the piece you needed to solidify this thing as like one of not just the best horror movies of the year. This is one of the best movies of the year, period, end of sentence. Right now I have it in the 3 spot behind Sorry Baby and Sinners, but like this is a movie that should be in a lot of people's top 10s. It should at least be in the conversation. And like I said, you have somebody in Zach Cregger who has solidified himself as one of the best in the genre. And we're getting Resident Evil next for him, but I've also heard him talk about like he's got a bunch of things already written. He was clearly busy during COVID. But there's like some things. He's got like a pitch that he's thrown to James Gunn that I'd be very interested in and kind of mirrors one of my favorite Batman stories. But I've also heard he wants to play in sci-fi. And I would love to see a sci-fi horror movie from Zach Cregger. Or just a straight up sci-fi movie. Like it doesn't even need to be horror. But like the way he plays with horror and dark comedy, it's that special sauce so far in all of his movies. But absolutely a tremendous win for him and everybody involved. Weapons is bonkers. It is tense. It is scary. It is funny. And it carries weight. It impacts you, man. Like you walk out feeling stuff. And to do all the things that he's doing and still have you come out feeling the way that you feel, so impressive. Cannot wait for that Resident Evil movie, and I cannot wait for his next original feature. But you're looking at one of the hottest in all of Hollywood right now, and I can't wait to see what this thing does at the box office. Like, this feels like the energy that I was getting on Thursday. This feels like it could really pop, and I'll be very interested to see how successful it is and how it lines up with Sinners. But talk about a huge double win for Warner Brothers this year with those 2 movies. Like, wow. Anyway, I have been yapping for way too long. So I'll flip it over to you guys. I want to know what you're feeling. I want to know what you're thinking. Are you planning to see Weapons if you haven't seen it? If you have, do you have any intention of seeing it more than once? And if not, that's cool. What'd you think of the movie? Good? Bad? Did you enjoy it? Was your crowd entertaining as much as the movie? Like, did your crowd play into how you felt about the movie? And that could be good or bad. I want to know about your experiences. And like I said, if you haven't seen this movie, are you excited? Is it on your to-do list? Are you going to see it in theater? You're going to wait for streaming. Like, this is a movie that's going to eat in both places. I think it's going to have a really solid week to 2 week run where like word of mouth hopefully gets people out to the theater. But when this comes to digital, oh man, it's going to do some business because you're talking about one of the most talked about movies of the year already. And it's been 24 hours. So I want to know everything you're thinking about the movie. Keep it spoiler free, good, bad, indifferent on Weapons down below in the comment section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime. We're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. You want to be here as I try to find my footing and get more consistent content up. You want to know what I've been up to this summer, what movies I'm really digging. You just dig the vibe. You want to show a little love and support. Come join C-Maniac Nation. It's super easy. Jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
C-Maniac Nation, you look nervous. Is it the scars? Would you like to know where I got them? No? Well, then maybe you'd like to see another video with the C-Man. How about up here or over here? And if you really dig the C-Man, well, then show him a little love right over there.